Hey there, welcome to another album review, and today we have Don't Smile at Me by Billie Eilish, which is something that was recommended to me, especially after the other album from her was already recommended to me. And this was like a, earlier album. This was like 2017 album. And I gotta say, I was like very surprised at the album because it's not the typical Billie Eilish that you kind of usually know. Right nowadays, you mostly know her for like the whispering singing, or usually the very interesting music. But here it's a lot, like it's basically either indie or it's very like it's not even indie. It's like it's indie pop or like just sad pop. I say like it's sort of like on that vein of music. It's definitely very like sad emotions type thing, which I guess that's what made her really popular, especially in the next album that she released. But yeah, this is like 9 songs. It's actually very small for an album. It's like what, half an hour maybe, something along those lines. It's around that time span, so it's more like of an EP than it is an album. I mean, technically it is an album, but it's a pretty short one. And yeah, I mean, a lot of the songs here do are more on that registry. The first song is more on their, I guess, normal registry. A lot more interesting sounds and everything. That sort of like a swag type way of being on the song. But most of the other songs are just these very like sad, even romantic, like type of fucking music. It's just a lot of like very sad romantic shit, basically. Which again, like I was very impressed, or I was very surprised rather, because the other album that I reviewed was much more like unique. It was definitely way more quirky, right? There was a lot more interesting stuff going on versus here, where it's a lot more vanilla. However, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of stuff here that definitely does scream to that unique production that Billie Eilish has. There's definitely a lot of the sonically speaking, a lot of the sound, especially in the first song, you notice that a lot, that it's very like tight, it's very unique, everything sounds super good, and I think that's what I enjoyed about it. I think it's like you usually listen to a lot of like sad pop, I guess, or like indie pop type artists all the time, and a lot of artists tend to do the more like pop artists tend to do like the sad songs, and usually they're not very interesting, and you kind of have the voice carrying it, right? If the voice carries it. And while Billie Eilish, at least here, she doesn't really. I know that she can, because of the new album that she put out. She can definitely carry it a lot when it comes to singing. But here, I would say like she doesn't carry it through singing, because the singing is more towards that tune, like not entirely whispery, but more on that like lower registry, much more like calm, even desperate than it is, belting, whatever, like it's definitely way more akin to the other album she released than, I guess, a normal pop singer still, right? But what does carry it compared to a lot of other pop artists is just the sounds are very tight, and they're very unique. Like a lot of the songs, despite them being sort of this, sad song, sad romantic song, whatever, right? They just combine so well with her voice and her style of singing, that and the sounds themselves are so unique, that even though the album definitely isn't as, I guess, quirky, or as definitely out there, I would say, or as experimental as the other album I heard, it's definitely still very unique. It's definitely still like it's much more comfort, I would say. I would say like this album is much more on the comfort side of things than it is perhaps on like a unique or a experimental, and you want to like engage with it or whatever. Like this is the type of stuff that you're sad and you put on the background, kind of like on that thing, rather than just actually trying to pay attention to it, or being like, oh yeah, this sounds really cool or whatever, right? So and there's nothing wrong with it. I think it's fine. It's definitely fine, especially when, I mean, at this point Billie Eilish was a teenager, I guess. And perhaps that's why her songs, especially here, resonated so much with people. I think it's simply the fact that she was a good outlet for teenage people to, especially teenage girls, to sort of have an outlet of, expressing themselves, and sort of have someone that was able to relate to their problems to a certain degree, right, and sing about those problems, which is why I also think that she got so much hate. I think Billie Eilish only got a lot of hate because you had definitely a lot of adults, especially that listened to the radio or whatever, that heard their songs and just didn't connect with them because they weren't teenagers anymore. Whereas I think that a lot of teenage people definitely did relate to a lot of the songs and a lot of what she had to say in them, right? Yeah, it's basically, again, like I think that's kind of the purpose of this album more than it is to be unique or whatever, right? It's definitely not as unique as the other album, and I think it's kind of hard to catch the uniqueness. I think that one of the problems with being unique all the time is that inevitably, even if you are super out there or whatever, you're no longer unique, right? Because that's what's expected of you. It's for you to be out there, right? And then that kind of like loses its shine. So that's why I find it really funny how the new album that she puts out is way more like, I guess, quote unquote, vanilla pop, comparatively speaking, to the one she put before that, right? To the Demons album, whatever the title is. It's a super long title, I don't remember, right? It's such a like subversion, because you expect these whispery singing type deal with like unique sounds and whatnot, and quirky music and whatnot, right? And then she just fucking subverts that by being like, oh, actually, I'm a really good singer, I don't need to whisper in order to just have appeal or whatever, right? It's the songs that have the appeal. It's not necessarily that my singing is quirky and that's why people see it. So in a way, that subversion of expectations is what, in my opinion, has been able to carry her through a long-standing career rather than a just one and done type artist, which there have been many of, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think that this album kind of already showcased part of that, like, again, not that the singing here is like super amazing or whatever, but it's definitely a much more vanilla album comparatively speaking to the other one, right? It speaks to much more, I guess, vanilla topics than the other one does, right? Even the production is definitely more vanilla, even if it's a little bit more unique than a lot of pop songs out there, especially at this time, definitely. Although some songs, they are kind of aged in their production, you can definitely like hear that they're not from this era anymore, right? But still, like, this just showcases perhaps a different side to Billie Eilish, and that's perhaps why I think that people maybe underestimated her when it came to being like, oh, yeah, she's just popular right now because of like the whispery singing or whatever, and then that quirkiness, and as soon as that falls off and people get tired, no one's gonna remember her anymore. Like, the reason is why I think that that's not the case is exactly because she has already showcased that she's actually really good, right? And I think that with this album, that's exactly what went on, right? Like, if you want to have a more perhaps fucking teenage sad love type, fucking Billie Eilish singing, I think this album's definitely on that registry, and it's definitely for you, right? And by the way, it's honestly a vibe, it's you can actually vibe quite a bit to it. I had it on the background for quite a bit before doing the review, just because I was doing some stuff, and I was just vibing with it. It's not necessarily something that I can say that I will seek out to put on or whatever, or say like, oh yeah, this was an amazing experience, life change. Definitely not, right? We're definitely not talking about Asian Glow here, but I've been hearing, unrelated, but I've been hearing Asian Glow quite a bit, yeah, it was definitely pleasant to listen to the album, and it was one of those things where it's like, yeah, I can understand why this was really popular back in the day, and why even today, some people still listen to it and still enjoy it and still relate to it, right? It's definitely one of those things where it's like, I don't think it needs to be the most amazing thing in the world for it to be good or for people to enjoy it, right? And it's definitely what happened here. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. In terms of my vibe meter, yeah, my vibe meter, I don't know, I was just going with an 8 out of 10. That's what I'm feeling at the moment. 8 out of 10. I think it's pretty solid, right? It's an 8 out of 10, and I'll see you tomorrow with a new album review.